Voila. And I'm glad to report the tank, hopefully you can see that, is super clean. I've been running E85 for a while. Hey, what's up, Speedy's Garage gang? Welcome back to the Speedy's Garage YouTube channel. I'm gonna jump right into it today. Been chasing a little bit of a fuel pressure issue and made a couple of phone calls. Some folks have said they have seen some fuel pumps fail in these cars, especially red eyes, with factory fuel systems. I talked to Mike over at OST. He said he's seen more than a couple come through his shop with a failed or failing fuel pump. And I called Tap Performance and they kind of said the same thing. They said, you probably first step, swap the fuel pumps out. Normally I wouldn't just throw parts at a problem until I could diagnose it and know for sure. But since this has been such a weird issue, I mean, I'm right on the edge of not having enough fuel. So if one of the pumps were getting weak, it might not show an obvious problem. And for what they cost and as easy as it is to swap out, figured I'd go ahead and do it just so that I know I've ticked that box. 100% it wouldn't be the fuel pumps. I doubt it's gonna fix the problem, so I'm not 100% confident on that, but I am gonna show you guys how to swap out some fuel pumps in a Fore fuel hat. It's pretty straightforward, so let's get right to it. And yes, I have tested the car to make sure each fuel pump is working. I'm just wondering if maybe one or both aren't working good enough. So if they've lost a little bit of, I'm hearing and learning that these pumps sometimes, they don't just fail completely, they actually just get weaker and weaker and weaker until they eventually fail. I want to eliminate that as even a possibility of my problem. That's why we're going to swap them out. And here's the box of parts I ordered. I ordered two brand new TI 285 fuel pumps. Now be careful if you have to do this. Make sure you order them from a reputable source. There are knockoffs out there that you want to avoid. You can see the part number on the box. Hold it up there for you. F9000285. I'll replace both pumps. That way I know I'm good to go. Ordered two new filters. While I'm in there, I might as well change those out. I've done this a couple of times with a mallet and a drift, I'll call it, or a big screwdriver. But there's a tool for the lock ring on top of the fuel hat. Super cheap. I'll leave a link in the description. Made sense to go ahead and get one as much as I've been working on these cars lately. My buddy Mike, who I've talked about before, he seems to know a lot about a lot. He had done this before and he said get some thin section wrenches. I had not heard of these, but they're going to make getting into parts of the fuel hat easier to disassemble. They were cheap. I'll leave a link in the description to these two, but you can see how thin they are. And then some of this stuff is to drain the fuel system. So, I upgraded to the red-eye fuel rails. Well, the main reason I wanted to do that, well, number one, they have a different fuel pressure sensor section in the back, which should improve flow, but they also include a barb or a Schrader valve to make draining the tank much, much more simple. And so this is the line I'm going to use to drain the tank. I'll leave a link to that in the description. And then this is optional, but I'm going to recommend it. These come in a kit. You might be able to find it individually, but it is a fuel pump relay bypass. So what you can do is make a little jumper wire and then you put it in the back fuse box, and I'll show you that in a minute, and it basically activates the fuel pump so that it'll run with the car off. You can drain the tank. What this does is it goes in place of the fuel pump relay. It's got a nice little switch on top, so we can turn it on and off. Easy peasy lemon squeezy. I don't have to worry about accidentally touching my little jumper wire to the wrong pin and causing a short and burning a fuse or anything like that. Thing was pretty cheap. They come in a kit, like I said, like 40 bucks. I'll leave that a link in the description too. But if you want to try to find it by itself, it's a 9036-1 made by IPA. And finally, since I'm going to have the hat apart anyway, I thought, well, I'll go ahead and replace the seals, the O-rings. These are Viton O-rings, and they're material that is designed to work and be okay with E85. Unfortunately, Fore does not sell just the O-rings. You have to buy a Hellcat hardware pack, which is what this is. Still pretty cheap. It was like 12 bucks. They charge $10 for shipping, flat rate, unfortunately. So the shipping was a little bit disappointing, but they did ship the same day. I got it very quickly, and it's going to be a nice to have just to know the seals and everything in the hat are all replaced and good to go. So I'm going to do that while it's in there. And this job isn't technically difficult, but I'll be honest, fooling with a fuel system is one of my least favorite things to do, so the pain in the butt factor goes up a little bit just because of that. There will be a little bit of fluid management we'll have to deal with. I'm going to get in the car, the back of the car, with a little bit of a bucket, so when I pull the fuel hat out, there'll be some fuel draining and stuff. I can set it in a pan or a bucket, that way I can give it to the workbench to work with it. And you are going to need some kind of fuel container to drain the tank, so make sure you have something like that handy that's suitable for fuel. So now let's just get busy. Put the relay in, or the relay bypass, I should say. And it plugs in just like the factory, I can see. And with that in place, all we have to do, car's not even keyed on or anything, is flip it to on. You can hear the pumps are running. And we are draining the fuel tank. Easy peasy. While that's draining, I'm going to take a minute to mention, obviously you want to use some common sense and some safety. You're dealing with the fuel system and flammable liquids, right? So I want to keep a fire extinguisher close by just in case. I want to make sure it's well ventilated and all of that stuff so we don't have any problems. The tank is drained. I'm not going to put the little Schrader cap back on until at the end. I'm going to fire the car up, make sure that doesn't leak. I don't expect it to, but better safe than sorry. There's the fuel we drained from the tank. Super easy. I highly recommend that. And now we're going to take the fuel hat out. Voila. So with all that checking out, I'm going to put about 5 gallons of fuel back in the car. I'm not going to put both cans until I fire the car up and know everything is good, and I'll probably take it for a short drive around the block. So that's next. A little fuel in the car, a little short test drive. Everything's good, especially going to check that fuel gauge and make sure that's all working properly. I'm going to put the other can of E85 back in the car, and then we're going to go for a real test drive. Probably have to go to Mexico, get another passport stamp. Now that I got some fuel in the tank, I'm going to key cycle the car a couple of times to get pressure to the rails. I always like to do 3. Okay, now I'm going to check the little Schrader valve that we drain the tank with. Dry to the bone. Perfect. Cool out, the tires are spinning. Makes it hard to test. Let's see how that looks. Well, replacing the fuel pumps did not solve my fuel pressure issue. I'm gonna have to keep poking away at that problem. I'll eventually figure it out, so stay tuned. I will give you guys some pointers on working on some of these fuel systems. Replacing the O-rings, I would recommend that. These aren't in terrible shape. They've been in there about 12,000 miles in about 18 months. But putting new ones in, you know you're better safe than sorry, and for 12 bucks for the hardware kit, it's probably worth it. I wish they sold just the O-rings. They could probably sell the O-rings for like 5 bucks or less. I might eventually try to find a Viton, that's what these are made of, O-ring set, and just have some spares on hand. Look at that. I highly recommend the drain hose. If you're lucky enough to have the Schrader valve on your fuel rail, that is a lifesaver. I've done it the old-fashioned way before, where either I had to drain the tank with a siphon, which is a pain in the butt, or trying to unplug the fuel hose, the feed line to the fuel rail. That is a pain in the butt. I love the relay. This makes it super easy. Plug that in, flip it on like you saw, it activates the pump. That is way better than my old jumper wire that I used to use. And these are pretty cheap. I think the whole set was like 40 bucks. Again, I'll leave a link in the description for this stuff. This thing, I should have gotten one a long time ago. Mike recommended it. My buddy Mike from the Hellcat forum, hellcatforum.org. He knows a lot about a lot. And he's like, man, why do you keep using a drift and a hammer? Just get one of these. It was like 20 bucks. I'll leave a link for that. Made things super easy. And he also recommended these thin section wrenches. I'll leave a link to those too. Probably could get it done without these, but this made it so easy, and for what they cost, you know, it's good to have some of these on hand. And hey, who doesn't like an excuse to buy tools, right? So that's sort of everything. You saw how to change the pumps out on the Fore hat. It's not terribly difficult. Took me an hour. Actually, it took me 2 hours. Filming things makes it take a little bit longer, but it usually doubles the time. If it's the first time you've ever worked on one of those, it'd probably be an hour and a half if you take your time. If you've done it before, an hour easy. Biggest thing is drain the tank. That makes things so much more pleasant and easier to work with. Get it as empty as you can get it, and using this setup made it quick and easy. I hope you enjoyed the video. Please give it a thumbs up if you did. Be sure to check us out on Instagram. It's @Speedys_garage, as well as the website, www.speedysgarage.net, and hopefully I'll see you out there.